superior title in my opinion. While the Wii U version may lack consistency and have level gimmicks that I'm not exactly comfortable with, it doesn't fucking drag like the 3DS version of the game. It starts out fine for me, and then it just nosedives into an area I don't want to go into, and it's a damn shame. If you like your Sonic levels to be long and don't care for the horrible special stages, I sure as hell didn't, then you just might find some enjoyment in Sonic Lost World for the 3DS. I gotta say, I'm not really surprised that I ended up having mixed feelings for Sonic Lost World. Again, ever since the first trailer back in May, I had inconsistent thoughts until the day came where I was finally able to play the game myself when it officially launched here in America. Back in my Sonic 06 review, and I mean the most recent one, I stated that I would love Sonic Team to give the adventure formula another shot since I still think it had a lot of potential. But Sonic Lost World for the Wii U doesn't feel like that step in the right direction the formula needed. It goes back to a time where Sonic games weren't all about speed, while at the same time losing its identity in the process. Sonic Lost World is by no means a bad game, I just don't think it's a very good Sonic game. I'd recommend you approach this one with caution. As I've stated earlier, I can only hope that future games in the lineup build upon what worked in Sonic Lost World and truly create an experience I can enjoy again and again. I got a feeling this is going to be one of the most polarizing Sonic games in the franchise's history, but I guess only time will tell for that one. And to all those that plan on getting the game, I hope you have a better overall experience than I did for both versions. Well, I hope that was the answer you guys were looking for. But thank you guys for watching. Have yourself a good night. Take care.
You idiots! These are not them! You've captured their stunt doubles!
That didn't negate the fact that I had a very fun time with this game. The bright and cartoony 3D graphics, the presentation overall, the magnificent orchestral soundtrack that brings familiar themes and new pieces to the series, and the smooth 60 frames per second are just the icing on this Hylian dessert. It should be worth noting, even after everything I discussed, notwithstanding the changes to the traditional Zelda formula, the open-ended structure, and slightly different story, I wouldn't call A Link Between Worlds a sequel to A Link to the Past, but rather a reimagining. It pretty much has all the elements that made A Link to the Past what it was, while simultaneously doing its own thing, and having production values similar to those of the 3D console Zelda games. Demographically speaking, Zelda enthusiasts will most likely get the greatest enjoyment out of this game thanks to all the winks and nods the game delivers to past Zelda games and fans, especially if you played A Link to the Past before this one. But even the likes of newcomers should find a good time with A Link Between Worlds thanks to its user-friendly interface, and perhaps even detractors of the SNES original may find something to like with this game. That last part is all conjecture on my behalf, but A Link Between Worlds is not just a great Zelda game, but also a great game overall. Now why the fuck do I have Majora's Mask hanging on my wall? A lot of you have probably noticed this review wasn't that much different from A Link to the Past review, but I should stress again, A Link Between Worlds does enough things differently to have its own identity, but at the same time it still shares a ton of Zelda conventions that I can only go into so much detail about without coming off as a broken record. The bottom line is, this is a great game, and you should definitely add it to your 3DS collection if you haven't done so already. With all that said, guys, thank you guys for watching, have a nice night, and what the hell. Awfully muddled when viewed up close. Am I fighting prisoners or zombies? I already mentioned the combat not being as smooth as the console games, but exploring the three main areas of Blackgate is nearly painful because of the sheer repetitiveness of the given tasks, the constant back and forth between new areas and places you explored previously, and the dreariness of the prison entirely. Blackgate Penitentiary puts me to sleep with its murky colors and overall sameness. Nothing has any sort of distinctive identity in this place, and I get that it's a prison, but this is also a video game. Liven it up a bit, would you? Traveling and discovering new areas is also a bit ass backwards. Batman has access to detective mode just like the other games, but in order to discover breakable walls or hidden areas needed to progress, you need to stop what you're doing to hold down the scan button on the touchscreen and analyze the room to search for anything that can be destroyed, despite the fact that you're already in detective mode. A breakable wall cannot be broken unless you scan it first, even if you know it's already there. And this sort of system will have you constantly stop all over the damn prison to scan for that one area you can destroy to proceed. As if the backtracking wasn't enough, this game has no flow as well. Some of the boss fights are pretty cool, but that doesn't negate the other 95% of the game. It's a shame too, because I don't find the game bad, it's just dull. And for me, that can be worse in some cases. The game's only half of the price of the console games, but even then I'd still wait for a price drop. Or you can spend that Christmas money you got from your grandparents or spouse or any other relative. Don't do that though. Go buy another game like The Last of Us or Link Between Worlds or BioShock Infinite.
Or you can splurge on the Steam Holiday Sale.
Exactly. Or you can...
But Johnny, you have BioShock Infinite.
Yeah, but this is 50%.
You don't need this, man.
Oh... This game has nostalgic throwbacks to its deaths via knockback. The enemy placement sucks too. Spear guards are fucking everywhere in this game, usually in positions that make them very awkward to fight against, which I wouldn't have a problem with if Richter wasn't so fucking restricted with his moveset. It's almost like they designed this game with Super Castlevania 4 Simon in mind, but decided at the last second to give Richter the retro treatment. Lastly, who the fuck designed the final boss against Dracula? Okay, so the final boss in Rondo of Blood wasn't really that hard, but did you really need to throw bottomless pits all over the fucking place? Just one wrong move and your ass is dead. The safest way to beat him is to plant your ass down on this pillar, and wait until he appears on a platform that you can easily strike him with your axe sub-weapon, but even then, it takes fucking forever. So not only is this fight's design horseshit, it's also boring. That's not even including his second form, which has a greater chance of knocking him into a pit, starting the entire fight over again. The levels aren't very long, and you have unlimited continues to keep going until your thumbs fall off, but completing the game doesn't feel as satisfying to do compared to previous games in the series, specifically Castlevania 1 and Super Castlevania 4. I know it's unfair to compare this game to Rondo of Blood, there just wasn't any way to fit this game into an SNES cartridge. But if I can't compare it to Rondo of Blood, I'm gonna compare it to Super Castlevania 4, and Castlevania Dracula X is not what I would call a worthy follow-up. The game is not horrible, it just has a lot of bullshit that makes it an overall inferior product. It's also expensive, and I'm not sure why. Maybe because it's rare? Something like that? I don't know. But thanks for the loan, Uncle. You saved me $130. For now. Who knows, I might just buy the damn game myself to complete the collection. Help me. Projectile attack isn't as reliable as Alucard's sword or Richter's whip, even when fully charged. The Maria you can play in the PSP version is more in line with how she handled in the original Rondo of Blood, complete with birds as a default attack, and animal buddy sub-weapons and item crashes. She's very fast on her feet, and can perform this dash maneuver with a quick press on either the left or right trigger, so she's definitely agile. Unfortunately, her overall offense is pretty miserable. Her attacks just can't compare to the likes of Alucard, Richter, or even her Saturn counterpart. She's essentially the hard mode, and beating the game with her is all a matter of how quick you can be with your fingers and sub-weapons. At this point, if you're still unsure on why I absolutely cannot get enough of this game, then the next best thing I can tell you is to simply try the game for yourself. Just like my opinion on Super Metroid, there's not much I can find wrong with this game that makes me give repeated playthroughs any second thoughts. The weakest part of the game is definitely going through the inverted castle, but I love how this game plays so much to not really care in the long run. No game is perfect, but this one is certainly a hell of a lot of fun. If you guys happen to know of any other games that are structured comparably to Symphony of the Night that's not a Castlevania or Metroid game, please let me know, because this is what I call a video game, and I give it the highest recommendation I can possibly muster. So go on, what are you waiting for? Give this game a shot. You can download a demo off Xbox Live. It's on the PSP either via the Dracula X Chronicles or the PlayStation Network store, so you can also play the game if you have a PS3. Or if you're feeling really nostalgic, get a physical copy for your PlayStation 1. Oh, the PlayStation 1. You know what? Next time I'm going to do something I've been meaning to do for a very long time. A console review. I mean, why not? This thing pretty much defined my gaming experiences from the mid to late 90s. I'm going to go work on that. You go play Symphony of the Night.
But you probably won't listen to me anyway, will you?
example of how not to do a 3D platform game that isn't Bubsy 3D, you look at this game. Bleak environments, incredibly ugly graphics, the most horrendous camera you can possibly have in a game like this, and horrible controls that put Superman 64 to shame. May I remind the audience that this game was released in 1998, and we already had much better games in years prior. In fact, Gex Enter the Gecko came out the same fucking year. I'm gonna go back to that game.
I'm flaming! In the manly way.
So many memories. The late 90s was a great time to be a video gamer, and I've been a loyal fan of Sony since then. Throughout the 2000s, they would continue to give me a bunch of fantastic titles on the PlayStation 2, and while the PlayStation 3 didn't have the best start when it came out, it later became one of my favorite systems of the past generation. The release of the PlayStation 4 really shows me just how far the brand has come along. I mean, back then, it was all about the games, and occasionally using the system as a makeshift CD player. Now the PlayStation can play movies or stream video content. It can be an internet browser, and you can communicate with your friends via messaging and social media. Hell, you don't even need physical discs anymore. You can download the games off an online store and play it that way. Technology truly is a marvelous thing, ladies and gentlemen. I'm happy to see it move on. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Isn't there one franchise in particular that I've been blatantly ignoring this entire video, despite it being well known that I played the ever-living hell out of these games back in the PS1 days? Well, yeah, but I have good reason for doing so. If you think I'm just going to skim through my experiences with this certain marsupial, you got another thing coming. With that said, it's time for another marathon, ladies and gentlemen, so when we next meet up, we're looking at the franchise of games that I've spent so many hours on that wasn't a Final Fantasy game. I'll see you guys then. If you don't have a memory card, you're going to have to use this password feature to pick up where you left off. And if you manage to get any gems, then the password just became a marathon of button inputs. So was there any point of getting all the gems besides bragging rights? No, not really. You can manage to get an alternate ending after rescuing your girlfriend, but even if you defeat Cortex without going after the gems, you still rescue your girlfriend in the end anyway. Actually, the 100% ending is a bit anticlimactic compared to the normal ending, because the stage that requires you to have all the gems to rescue Tawna is located before the final boss level, so you can possibly save Tawna without ever having to face Cortex. Off the top of my head, I don't think I ever played a platformer that allowed me to do that. Nearly 18 years after its debut, the first game in the Crash Bandicoot franchise is something I believe platformer enthusiasts can welcome. But if I were to recommend you a game in the series, Crash 1 wouldn't immediately come to mind. It's the first game in the series, and hot damn does it sure feel like it. If you don't feel like going after the gems, you can beat this game in just a few hours, even if it's your first time. But be prepared to have your patience tested and tempered if you decide to go for 100% completion. The lack of analog control may be a turnoff for gamers of today, but I still think Crash handles well enough with the D-pad. And while I may not revisit this often now, it's still a reasonably solid game that you should try out, if only to see how Crash Bandicoot got its start. The first title undeniably left its mark on the PlayStation 1. It's the second best-selling Crash game on the system with over 6 million copies sold. And the main character himself would be seen as the makeshift mascot for the PlayStation in the late 90s. I say makeshift because I don't think it was ever confirmed that he was the official mascot of PlayStation, but I guess it doesn't really matter if a bunch of people thought he was anyway. Naughty Dog, without a doubt, knew they had something going here, and 1 year after the release of the original game, we got its sequel, but that's for next time, so I'll see you guys then with Crash Bandicoot 2, Cortex Strikes Back. Thank you guys for watching, have a great night, and take care.